It's time for the human link.
All right. Hello, everybody. We are the human link. You want to go ahead and
Introduce yourselves.
Yeah,
we got it.
Luke. I'm a grad student here. Did my undergrad here in Spanish literature, and now I'm studying real estate.
My name is Lauren DeBell, and I have just finished the graduate program here and did my undergrad at University of Colorado in exercise physiology.
And I'm Tom Hanna. I'm from Fort Smith, Arkansas. Did my undergraduate here as well. Just hopped into the master's program. Master's being the real estate and construction management program. I'm currently a market analyst for THK Associates. Yeah. Go ahead.
This is our presentation.
Yeah, so first off, to give you a little bit about our philosophy, our own mindset, we're kind of functioning under the notion that many assets exist, albeit somewhat invisibly, that we can leverage to increase community scale well-being. And we're going to do that by connecting individuals to currently unleveraged physical community assets, but more importantly, by trying to leverage the human capital to enhance opportunity and foster social durability.
So just to talk a little bit about our platform. So effectively, our overall platform for the West Denver area is to establish a social impact organizational structure. We're calling that structure the West Denver Social Impact, or WIDSI, partnership. And that entire structure is going to be based on a common sense of values. Those are establishing place-based economies, cradle-to-career education opportunities, long-term affordability for both the residents and the businesses, accessibility to health and wellness, and cross-sector engagement between public, private, and nonprofit entities. So essentially, we are creating a structure where we want to bring all of the influencers that function in the West Denver area together and provide a great central resource.
So we focused on three main critical issues, being connectivity, education and careers, and affordability. Connectivity being kind of the most important of these three, as each, the other two kind of build off of the capacity of connectivity. So we wanted to focus on not only the Denver region connectivity, but mainly connectivity within West Denver itself. A lot of people talk about how the highway systems in the Platte River, they all kind of divide West Denver area from the rest of the greater region. But a lot of people kind of overlook the concept that there's not a lot of connectivity within West Denver itself. So we decided to do a little bit of asset mapping of our own. And we identified physical and social capital that allows for a lot of great opportunities. So in this map that we pulled together, you can see the green denoting all of the parks in West Denver, the white denoting all of the churches in West Denver, blue denoting the schools, and red denoting libraries.
No, reverse. Right?
No.
With confidence.
More schools than libraries.
Or schools and libraries.
Yes.
Yes.
So we just wanted to take an overview of all the assets that had the potential as existing assets to sort of fall into our project, and then sort of narrow that down.
The idea was to foster dense nodes of activity by implementing strategic opportunities within the existing assets. And in turn, we'll increase the connectivity by implementing these proposals that we're about to share with you.
Yeah, so right here we get a demographic look at what's going on inside West Denver right now. So what you should be seeing here is that a shockingly large part of the population in West Denver is very young. So that means these are people who are either in school currently or have just left school.
Now this relates back to connectivity pretty strongly, though education is a critical issue in itself. Because high school education is found primarily outside the area, though we did identify one or two high schools within the West Denver area, it doesn't service nearly half the population. And because more than half the population is between those high school ages, it's really important that we create connectivity to education within West Denver so that you retain that daytime population that is now being bussed out.
Okay, so we think education can solve a lot of issues that's happening in West Denver right now. if you are giving somebody the proper education, you're not only teaching them how to do algebra and teaching them about social studies, but you're also giving them what's important to be a functioning member of a community, somebody who can give back and who can then use resources in a responsible way. So what we wanted to do is work off infrastructure that is already existing. Denver 2020 is a plan for the city that is a 5-year comprehensive plan that just focuses on the need to reevaluate the educational system in Denver. Also, working off that, since we know Denver already wants to change the way education's done, we were thinking of some possibilities that they could pivot to, some forms of education that we've researched that have had very positive impacts on students. KIPP charter schools being one of those, which I'll go into later. Character development as a new focus to the education. That the idea that somebody's personal traits has to be taught just as much as any other discipline in school. And then ultimately what you want to have from a good education system is a citizen scientist and a community leader. So somebody who's actively taking stock in what's going on in their community, how healthy is it, what needs improvement, what's working well, and then how they can affect that change themselves. So Denver 2020 is, I'll break it down for you a little bit. This is their plan. It's what they laid out is a little bit vague, so I'll go into it a little more. They want to increase the accessibility of schools in West Denver, because currently there are 2 high schools serving a 64,000 acre portion of Denver, which is quite ridiculous. I come from Portland, Maine, which is roughly the same size as West Denver, and we have 8 high schools. They also want to hold schools to higher standards so that when children are moving up in grades, they are ready to meet the curriculum that they'll be facing. Currently, when children are reaching 3rd grade, they are not reading and writing at that level. So that's a big issue for Denver to solve right now. And then holding these schools accountable for students after they graduate is also really important too. How successful are they when they're done? Have they been set up to have furthered education, and if not furthered education, a practical career where they have social skills, they know how to interact with people, and they have basic education? Also, one more thing is they want to close the opportunity gap within Colorado. The access to higher education right now is really only afforded to more affluent communities. So the focus on reworking these schools will also be aimed to making the idea of going to college just normal for everyone. Expeditionary learning is project-based curriculum, so that means when you're in school, all of your classes, math, science, social studies, workshop, are all based around one project. That means the students are, for a quarter or a semester, are immersed in one project and seeing all of the different things that go into that. They're getting a holistic view of the curriculum. I actually went to this middle school, King Middle School. It was the best educational experience I've had up until my grad school, obviously.
Up until this project?
But it makes learning really fun, and I'm not just saying that to be quiche. It was really cool because every day you're going on a different field trip. They use community resources as a learning tool. So the importance of going in your own backyard and finding out how you can learn from your own backyard is like the utmost priority. This school is rated the best middle school in the state. 29 different languages are spoken there. Their ESL programs are amazing, and they integrate into normal classrooms. So people who don't even necessarily know how to speak English can interact and become friends with everybody in the school. They're not just siloed and limited to learning English. They're brought into the community, and that is another core principle, is getting all of the students involved in a group. It's having everybody work together. Some of the best ways to learn. KIPP schools are charter schools, which for a lot of people are kind of a scary and complex subject. In the news, charter schools get a really bad rap of taking advantage of public funds, but KIPP school has really done it right. Originally based in the Bronx, they target underprivileged and underserved areas. So what they aim to do is to go into a community and to give teachers and students all of the resources they need to be a successful person. 51% of their effort is dedicated to making sure that the students have strong character by the time they leave, and then 49% is dedicated that they actually have met the standards of the curriculum. And ironically, the focus on making the students better people has actually given them the highest test scores. Right now, the KIPP High School in West Denver, which is one of the 2 high schools in West Denver, is rated the #2 school in all of Colorado. Hold on a sec, I've got actually quite a bit about this KIPP school. I think it's 96% of the population of the KIPP school is minority. English second language is very common there. There are 356 students total. So these are really small schools. While it is having a large impact on the community, over 80% of kids actually going to college and 75% completing a degree afterwards. Their motto is through college. It's still not having a big enough impact on West Denver. So by working within frameworks such as expeditionary learning, a already set up and tried and tested proven method to getting students engaged and moving on successfully and graduating high school, and then this KIPP school, which has been proven to getting kids all the way through college, these are frameworks that are already set up and that we can re-implement all around West Denver. So if we go to the next slide, we have an asset map. So I did a little research, and unfortunately for the Jesuits in the room, church attendance is going down drastically. So we leveraged what's going on in the community in terms of this sort of downtick in traditional religious practice, and we mapped churches. KIPP schools have already been known to take over churches that just no longer have a fellowship. So it's more than comfortable for a KIPP school to find some old used church or any other abandoned building like strip malls. They move into strip malls and they can set up classrooms pretty much anywhere. They're really flexible and they're really good for taking advantage of that excess capacity that's already existing in West Denver.
It's important to note that KIPP has a bit of a requirement that they like to have feeder schools, a middle school that feeds directly into that high school. So what we're proposing is actually, it's an old abandoned church located here, and on the same lot is about 30,000 square feet of additional space that we're proposing to actually build out for a middle school as well.
And it should just be noted, the existing KIPP high school is also adjacent to the existing KIPP middle school. So there's already a framework and a structure within West Colfax that's proven to be very successful.
Yeah, so the middle school to high school feeder system is a caveat of the KIPP program, but the education, the expeditionary learning is an alternative to that has similar results, but doesn't necessarily need to be tied to a feeder school. So you can have an expeditionary high school or an expeditionary middle school that then feed into other forms of public education.
It's also interesting that there's quite a few students who came from this KIPP school who were in attendance at TU currently.
Getting full scholarships,
Getting
actually.
full scholarships even.
Yeah, that KIPP school specifically is #2 in Colorado. It's the 51st best charter school in the United States, and it is the 164th best high school in the United States. So just to say that there are no schools in this area doesn't mean that you can't teach these kids. It just means people haven't really invested the time and resources into such a valuable excess capacity that has the possibility to transform West Denver. Vocational schools are also really great because education isn't really only just for those people who are going into middle school or high school or grade school. Traditional education just isn't for everybody. People drop out, people leave school for whatever reasons, you know, life throws a lot of curveballs. And right now, here in Colorado, being part of the Burns School, there is definitely a deficit in skilled labor in terms of construction. So opening up a vocational school that could teach convicts, high school dropouts, you could even just teach skill sets to kids after school in terms of giving them an opportunity to stay occupied and stay off the streets where they might make mischief. That doesn't all have to take place within the same building. Maybe putting convicts and kids together isn't the best idea, but it just shows how diverse and how flexible the model can be. Right now, the Colorado Construction Institute in North Denver is already doing something similar where they're taking kids from high school after school and they're teaching them how to frame houses. They're teaching them all the skills they need to know to be able to go into this booming construction market here in Colorado and make a living. So imagine Denver 2020 is part of this vision for Denver, but this is more of an arts and humanities side. So as I was talking about, it's important to develop the character of students. Developing their character in terms of art and how they express themselves is also really, really important. Urban Arts Fund, Imagine 2020 Fund, and PS You Are Here are 3 ways you can get funding from Denver for an art project in your community. Right here, this is actually already in the Decatur development in the Sun Valley Eco District. And they went around and they did a beautification process of all these dumpsters. There are no alleys in that housing development, so all the dumpsters have to be on the streets. They took students and existing like artist groups and just let them run wild with it. Asked what their ideas were and then told them to go at it. This one down here leverages community space in parks. They recycled felled trees and then turned them into hidden speakers. So as you're walking around and you see these like chunks of giant cut up trees, there are little doors, and when you open them, they have little pieces of history of the area. So promoting this type of creativity in one's community only strengthens ties.
Okay, so one of the other aspects of our proposal is to develop a social impact resource center. So this really ties into our overall platform and framework in terms of bringing together cross-sector entities that really have a common goal of impacting the community from a social impact perspective. So we have proposed this building as an adaptive reuse project in the Excel building that is being decommissioned on the east side of the Platte River. Within this building, we're proposing a co-working space that would be dedicated to organizations working in the social impact space. This could have a lot of benefits, not just the sharing of ideas, but also lowering overhead in terms of sharing staff, administrative staff, PR, media staff, digital media management. Some of the other benefits are just in terms of all the collaborative idea sharing that can happen cross-sector and within those organizations. I think in terms of funding, there could certainly be two sorts of, I guess, capital changing traditional lease agreements between the tenants that would help pay for the operating costs and obviously the building, potentially on a sliding scale with nonprofits paying less than for-profit organizations. Potentially, I'll talk a little bit more about the community land trust model, but this building is one that could be potentially held in a West Colfax community land trust to maintain long-term affordability. And we also think this has the potential to grow the social capital and to grow social durability by having the organizations that are housed there also contribute back to the community in an in-kind way. So whether that's some of the for-profit companies volunteering time with the nonprofit entities and just sort of getting their hands dirty, working out in the community, we think it's a great platform to facilitate that kind of behavior. This is just an example of some of the types of organizations that we think could collaborate in a space like this. Obviously, you've heard about Revision and beyond what they're doing with the backyard gardens. It also sounds like they're in the process of trying to develop a community land trust in that their impact will be expanded beyond the Westwood neighborhood into the larger West Denver community. Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute, which I'll talk about in a little bit, is a pretty inspirational nonprofit organization that gives micro lending and mentor support to typically troubled individuals that have an entrepreneurial spirit. So we think that is a tremendous framework that we have within West Denver to help build up the entrepreneurial spirit and the small business development. Weave Social Finance is sort of a non-traditional investment banking model where they are really focusing on social impact investment and even developing some models to take philanthropic funds to reinvest at lower rates of return, but for investors that want to have that triple bottom line impact and want to know that they're impacting locally in their community. There's companies like the Naughty Tie company that is working to employ approximately 1/3 of their employees are refugees, and they're really dedicated to a social impact model. Similarly, the Purple Door Coffee Company here in Denver is dedicated to taking homeless people off the streets and giving them job training and a path to employment. And then, of course, Denver Housing and SVED are huge impacts in this area. And one of the other sort of platforms and frameworks that connects to what Luke was talking about, and Tom, is we sort of have a proposal for the integration of a software program. And one of these is an existing digital asset called Impact Loop. So it's a cloud-based web software that allows, as you can see, sort of educational institutions, nonprofits, foundations, investors, all the way down to individuals to contribute to different data sets. So the way that this actually works is any entity, so for instance, the collaborative social impact entity could become a member and designate a number of other entities that are all able to contribute to an impact loop, and typically you would separate the impact loops by use. So for instance, it would be an education impact loop, a natural systems impact loop, a connectivity impact loop, whatever seems appropriate for the community. And then anybody, like I have the app on my cell phone, you have the ability to go around, take photos, upload data, write in text feedback with blogs, and all of this can then be sort of disseminated through customized reports. The whole system can be customized to West Denver. So it's a pretty interesting tool that we're trying to learn more about, but it's a way to kind of incorporate that Peers Inc. model where there is a platform that everybody can contribute to, including the residents, and it gives them some ownership of their own community. So for instance, if they're walking around and they know that there's a project in terms of wanting to restore the natural systems, they could literally walk past a portion of the ecosystem or the Platte River, take a photo, write their text message about it, or, and so then it's logged in terms of the blog, and it could also be connected to events in terms of river cleanup or how they're going to contribute.
This could tie into education as well. So the expeditionary learning I was talking about, how it's project-based. Teachers take students into the field, they do field research, they go test water quality of the Platte River. They can then upload all of the data that they've collected with their teachers and with government officials onto this impact loop. And then that can be shared with whoever needs that data, like CityCraft with this inter-university model that you're working on. This allows students and citizens to be able to have hands-on scientific research in their own community. They could test soils, any data that they wanted to collect.
We're tapping into that idea of excess capacity within social capital by using the term that you use, citizen scientists, to actually do some of the groundwork for us.
Tom, do you want to talk about the indicators? Or I can. Yeah, these are just some of the sort of indication data sets that we thought could apply to this type of software. So from an economic standpoint, anything from small businesses trying to assess how many employees how many people are being employed in West Denver, what's the retention rate, where are compensation packages going, how many businesses are being created, From the residential standpoint, you know, what are the operating expenses? And so we can start to sort of evaluate metrics within the community that we can then, you know, present and understand kind of where the community itself has room for improvement. We talked about the environmental and the education.
And in an ideal situation, these indicators would be available to the public from that app that we just shared with you guys. The idea would be that you can log on and see these kind of live metrics of what's going on in the community and the city, know how your neighborhood is doing.
Yeah. And currently this software is being used. It's being used in Kenya for some educational data rates, and it's got some, if anyone's interested, it's got some interesting applicability. And then another aspect that we wanted to incorporate into the same building where we are proposing the Social Impact Resource Center is a Maker's Cafe. And I was going to play this little video. We have time.
Yeah. Especially for a video.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, why does it say no sound?
Might not be supported on the HDMI.
Wait a minute.
Want to pause it?
Pause
I don't know why the Brooks Brother ad shows up there.
it. Can you go off your computer, Sam?
No, computer sounds on.
Should be on Crest One, so it should be based off of that.
Welcome to Shoreditch East.
Yeah, turn it down to YouTube.
You can.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Then this is Maker's Cafe. It's half makerspace, half cafe. The idea is people can come in, grab a coffee, discuss projects, and then they come up with an idea. They bring the file to us, and we make it happen on the spot by using our technologies like laser cutting and 3D printing. Most of them, they just have a basic idea of what they want, but they don't have the skill set to make it happen. So we sit down with the people, and they tell us what they want, and they show us some sketches. And we open our computer, our CAD software, and we turn that idea into a file that we can run through our machines. We're not just a makerspace, we are a cafe as well, and it's a very good conversation starter. I see this as a show business rather than a manufacturing business, and one of the slogans we push is the theater of manufacturing. So you are the audience, and then we are the actors on the stage with our machines, and you have the freedom to just grab a coffee and just chill out and just watch what's happening around you and witness the manufacturing process. Or you can get involved by bringing us something that you would like to be created. So this is our coffee space. It's a collaboration with Old Shoreditch Station. They are the cool kids in the space in Shoreditch. People can just take a seat, grab a coffee, and discuss projects. They can make things on the spot. This is all about the theater of manufacturing.
It's the evenings and weekends we organize workshops. They are intro classes, they are all free. The intention is people will get an intro to these technologies, and then a couple of weeks later, hopefully they will turn that crazy idea into something that they can make use of our services for. People assume that at some point we will have 3D printers in our houses, a bit like a washing machine or an inkjet printer. I foresee people will have 3D printers in their houses, but there's nothing stopping us from providing our services with our consultancy or workshops, training. So Maker's Cafe is a combination of all my fantasies in one place.
So again, to reiterate, the Maker's Cafe really just taps into that concept of social excess capacity. By kind of presenting this platform, you're allowing the peers, the citizens, the individuals, to come in and populate that platform and create some pretty cool stuff.
We are having technical difficulties now.
Oh, that makes me feel good. I saw all these young guys have trouble, makes
Makes you happy.
me happy.
So
I don't feel so alone.
on the break, I need to catch an airplane, so I'm going to leave a little early here, but this is all going to be recorded now.
It's all recorded.
So, so far so good.
Thank you, Barb.
Yeah, and have fun, everybody. I'm sure you're going to have great questions and comments.
Thanks for coming.
Your browser
Pleasure.
will let us
I wish I
access
could
the full
stay.
page, and the button is right here.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Oh, I know.
What's that?
I don't
Go
know.
ahead and plug it back.
You got a lot of handle.
Barb, can you
It was getting
provide me
screwed up
your
by.
feedback?
Yeah,
I know my marks are too much, 1 second.
yeah. All right, bye.
Thanks. Let me-
Where were we?
Repair Cafe. Once we get some more on Maker's Cafe. Lauren,
What's that?
you have more on Maker's Cafe?
Yeah, I'll say.
Okay. We're back.
Just a couple things we thought was pretty interesting about the Makers Cafe is it provides a great platform for entrepreneurs. I think it ties into a niche in terms of small scale manufacturing and offers a lot of opportunities. In terms of West Colfax in particular, I think it's an interesting location because it's near the Steam on the Platte, which is targeting a lot of creative businesses. It's not too far from the KIPP schools, and KIPP, from the existing KIPP school, which they really focus on even in the 5th to 8th grade, having the kids start to study computers and coding and a lot of very high-tech things. So we think this could be just a great integration point for the education, the private sector, and the public sector. There's also an interesting opportunity in terms of tying into the existing web platform of Quirky, where the students and the community members could come together with ideas for inventions, and as they develop that, use the 3D printing cafe to make a prototype, and then put that idea on Quirky. It has the potential to create an income stream, and I just think we just think it opens up a lot of opportunities. We think there's some potential funding there through the Office of Economic Development, just from the job creation standpoint, and that eventually operations and sales from the cafe would make it a self-sufficient and profitable business.
So somewhat similar is the Repair Cafe, and this has a lot of synergies with the Makers Cafe. The idea is that this is a space where people with tools and know-how can come, gather, bring their tools and their know-how, and provide services for those who have broken goods or items that they aren't quite ready to discard. We really live in a throwaway society, and this is kind of one way to help combat that to some extent. So the way that we see this functioning is we could incorporate it into one of the few youth centers in the area. However, because it's such flexible programming, it can really be implemented into quite a few different existing assets. It's entirely volunteer-based, so it really relies on the excess social capacity within the neighborhoods. And it's an informal opportunity for connectivity and fostering social durability. And it even gives an opportunity for the youth to potentially connect with employers.
Do you guys want to see that video as well? Yeah, it's kind of a cool. Well, you said yet. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. This one's in subtitle. It's gonna be- it's gonna
Het Repair Café is een ontmoetingsplaats in de buurt, waar je met hulp van handige vrijwilligers uit de buurt je eigen spullen kunt repareren.
Ik vind het te gek als we dingen 3 jaar weg te gooien.
En dat is gezellig, je ontmoet mensen uit je eigen buurt. En aan de andere kant doe je iets goeds voor het milieu.
We leven in een wegwerpmaatschappij, dat vind ik heel slecht. Maar alles wat gerepareerd kan worden, moet gerepareerd. Want we hebben al genoeg afval.
En nu doet hij wel. Precies. Ja hoor, succes. Je krijgt ook dingen van ja, het is van mijn vader geweest en laatst iets is van mijn schoonvader geweest. Ja, die mensen zijn niet meer en dan heb ik een keer een zaklampje gemaakt. Nou, ja, als je het bekijkt is het een prul, maar het is wel van mijn vader geweest. Nou, als je daar weer aan de gang krijgt, is het wel een heel leuk gevoel dan. Hè. Dan denk je ja, dat is wel weer leuk. En waar zitten de problemen in?
Inmiddels zijn er al op honderden plaatsen in Nederland repaircafés. En er zijn er inmiddels ook in België, in Duitsland, in de Verenigde Staten, in Brazilië. Nou, op de gekste plekken ontstaan ook repaircafés.
Nou, ik had ook op internet ook gevonden dat meer mensen dit probleem hadden.
Ja.
En ook allemaal er niet uitkwamen. Dus ik denk, ja, misschien heeft iemand er wel.
Kijk, want er kunnen nog onderdelen.
Ja, er zit een soort band of zo. Dat dingetje?
Dat kan de oorzaak wezen.
Echt waar?
Gewoon zo'n dingetje.
Dat is gewoon kalk. Met het kalk houdt hij het klepje open. En dan gaat het klepje niet dicht. En dan, ja.
Het klinkt aannemelijk. Het klinkt aannemelijk.
Ja, kijk wat eruit.
Kijk, wil je dat zeggen?
Alle rommel.
Held.
Die man die draait gewoon dat ding open en die haalt gewoon het ding helemaal uit elkaar. Nou ja, test hem even en het water loopt gewoon weer door.
Mensen kunnen via onze website het Repaircafé startpakket bestellen. En dan kunnen ze daarmee zelf aan de slag in hun eigen buurt.
So, two things to add to that. One being that in such a low income area where the average income is around $2,000, you don't want to be a victim of planned obsolescence. You don't want to have to deal with that. You really want to purchase something and purchase it once and be able to use it throughout its lifetime. And two, the synergies between the Repair Cafe and the Makers Cafe are pretty interesting because found that at the Repair Cafe, say that they lost a piece or they're missing a component to one of these things they're trying to fix. And you can't find a lot of these smaller little components. If you go to the Makers Cafe, you could perhaps have them mold one out of the 3D printers or laser engravers or whatever.
I just want to mention a couple things. I think what was so great about that video is you can really understand how it creates social durability. In this type of neighborhood especially, it is a almost no-cost solution. You don't need separate infrastructure. It can be implemented, as Tom said, in youth centers, in libraries, in high schools, and it's just a great model for neighborhood connections.
So the Human Library, this is kind of a cool idea. It kind of functions under the frameworks of like that of a TED Talk. It doesn't have to be a nightly thing or even weekly or monthly. However, it's kind of a pop-up shop of the library, but instead of books, you're tapping into social capital. So if you want to hear stories from individuals, this is a place where you can come and it's kind of a storytelling center. It's extremely flexible, again, so you can really set up shop almost in any of those existing assets that we brought forth to you guys there at the beginning of the presentation. It's extremely low cost because really just the voice is all that you need. And it, again, like almost everything else we've presented, it really helps foster social durability and it promotes empowerment amongst those who attend.
And I think in an area like West Colfax, this can be an alternative to a storytelling center where people are really motivated to hold events where individuals feel empowered and safe to share their stories, to know that they're helping to kind of foster diversity and reduce prejudice. So another one of our framework ideas was in terms of residential affordability was Revision has again talked about creating a community land trust, and rather than us coming into West Colfax and trying to create a different organization that has the similar purpose, we thought about trying to partner with the Revision Community Land Trust and under that model to bring together nonprofit funding, donations, not donations, but grant funding and private donations to be able to purchase the houses in the West Colfax area as they become available. And under that model, the Community Land Trust would retain ownership of the land, but the individual residents would hold ownership of the houses. So in that way, the residents get to see some of the benefit of the appreciation, but the community land trust is able to then also retain an affordable price point for the next owner. So it's kind of a win-win model, and we think it could be really helpful in trying to combat some of the gentrification concerns that are going throughout West Colfax right now. A little bit about Rocky Mountain Microfinance. So they run an interesting program called the Business Launch Bootcamp, and currently that program, so Rocky Mountain Microfinance, the map Tom showed, is within the West Colfax area, and currently there are only 8 individuals that go through the Business Launch Bootcamp at a time right now, and we feel like that's an existing asset that could be expanded throughout the West Colfax area with more mentors and more funding. But effectively, this program has been very successful in helping to launch small businesses, especially in low-income areas and for individuals that would not otherwise have the funding and the resources to do so. It's typically a 12-week program. People come to the program with a passion and a purpose. They can earn up to a $2,500 microfinance loan. It says 8% interest, 6 to 12-month repayment. They've had tremendous success with this program. They've launched over 118 entrepreneurs with a 70% success rate. And as of 2016, they've lent about $300,000 with a 95% repayment rate. So we thought that was a pretty inspiring model to help stand up an independent economy in West Denver. As I mentioned before, Weave Social Finance is another financial institution that we think could be sort of a fundamental resource for an area like West Colfax. So again, their focus is on investment banking services that focus at low-income communities, and particularly with social impact communities, working in the new market tax credit area, and then also philanthropic social impact investing.
So, to wrap this up, when we looked at this project, we didn't want to be those people who just looked at West Denver as another impoverished community and say, this is what you guys need, this is how you're going to implement it, and then leave. What we wanted to do was think of ways that they didn't need any guidance or support from us, they just needed to access the capacity that was already there. So what we did was we compiled a list of places, companies, entities, NGOs, all of these change makers that are working in West Denver, and then we're putting them together on a platform so that they have access to each other's knowledge, each other's information, each other's resources. We didn't want to just put forth some ideas and then kind of leave them hanging. We wanted to leave them with something that they could grow off.
And
continue. No?
Yeah, just to finish, we had a little statement. Sharing resources is not an advanced concept, and it is typically one of the first acts that we learn as children, to share, until we grow and unlearn this philosophy in the name of ego, greed, lack of communication. We see West Denver as an opportunity to return to our roots, where sharing resources is the default, not the exception, and where collaboration is fundamental to success. We believe the majority of baseline assets we need currently exist. It is simply a matter of connecting the human capital with financial, physical, and social networks to create an integrated system that is deeply rooted and stable.
So I have a comment, not a question. Thinking about the Repair Cafe, one of the things that you guys were talking about, building social capital and taking advantage of the existing human capital, I think that there's, both with the makerspace, but I think with the Repair Cafe even more so, that there probably is a whole variety of knowledge and expertise in that community that can be used. But the Repair Cafe also provides the opportunity to bring in volunteers from other places with skills and knowledge and expertise that has the capacity to build bridging social capital between a very isolated, homogeneously low-income community with people other places. And that, I was thinking about kind of long-term sustainability is a real opportunity, and probably both of those programs and something to think about intentionality and planning and engagement of partners.
And I think it could go the other direction too. I mean, I think there's some, a lot of knowledge that's probably untapped in those neighborhoods that people like myself, and I think in particular the millennial generations don't want to get rid of stuff. And I mean, I know I have cameras from my grandfather, and I mean, I have stuff that I often don't know where to go to get fixed, or I don't want to pay more than its value.
Yeah.
But the opportunity to go, I mean, I've been fascinated with repair cafes for a while, but the opportunity to go and have an interaction and meet people and almost learn what you're doing, I mean, in the concept of give a man a fish or teach him how to fish, I think is pretty compelling as well.
And the idea of bringing in the rest of Denver into West Denver is also a huge part of connectivity. So we wanted to work within West Denver to create a strong foundation for West Denver, but the next step would be to spread this all throughout Denver. I mean, this isn't just a low income model. This is all of these things we've provided. It can have impacts on anyone. These education models, they don't just work for low income areas, they also create success for any student. Also, the area we were talking about, the Excel building, it's right on the edge of the Sun Valley Eco District, and it's right next to Steam on the Platte development, which is going to be a very hip and happening development, hopefully. So as we're kind of creating this linkage of different community nodes, it will be an introduction for the rest of Denver to kind of get to know who West Denver is by seeing these maker spaces of the cafes and these repair shops. I think it will be a cool reintroduction to the rest of Denver.
I thought your presentation was very interesting and comprehensive. And as an architect and as a planner, I want to see some beautiful graphics that kind of tie everything together, because there's so much information, right? Because it's very layered. And then I think that one of the really interesting things is that there is this potential for other connections, right? Because of all these things, right? There is potential for it igniting and making other things happen, right? So I think the word connectivity, I think, is really appropriate in your presentation. And the other thing that I thought about was, and I've been thinking a lot about this idea of shared vulnerability, right? We share everything, right? We share knowledge, resources, but I think that you have an interesting model where it's really about people that have certain vulnerabilities and weaknesses, and if you can kind of come together as a community, that can really be celebrated. So I think all those things are really interesting, and they create a lot of possibilities. One thing that I think would make your presentation better, and will take it to potentially the next level, is kind of mapping out not just the physical assets, but how these different venues and different places can really begin to kind of support off of each other, and it could, open sort of like new doors, right? I think that's sort of the exciting part of it. Yeah. So
we would have loved to have gotten to that, but it's the work we've done for this was just like looking at so much information. We're just getting flooded.
Exactly,
To have a couple weeks, if we had even another week, we could show you.
Yeah, so here's all this sort of documentation, sort of horizontal, lateral information connection. Now that you could actually make it three-dimensional, right, and figure out how these things can not only connect horizontally, but sort of vertically, right? Yeah, so that's really interesting.
To kind of tack on what you just said about shared vulnerability, kind of goes along with something that John's told us, and that's that if you look at these communities as liabilities, the demographics, the people within it, as so many people do, and trying to develop an area like this, it's a lot less advantageous than looking at them as an opportunity. And I think that looking at them as an opportunity of, yes, it is shared vulnerability, but it also presents a great opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, to point, what she said, she was talking about, repair cafes and makers cafe. And one of the first things that I thought of was, okay, repair cafes. So you need volunteers, you need expertise, you need people with spare time and transportation who can be part of this, right? So that is, in a way, a weakness. But she also pointed out that it's also an opportunity where you can have people from other parts of the city or whatever to come and meet here, right? And then also the local residents can really show off their expertise, right?
Right.
So, you know,
we sort of saw it as as an opportunity in a number of ways. I mean, from the social impact, resource center, sort of part of the idea there was that maybe if you're operating, if there's incentives to move into West Denver, that you're then in turn either donating some of your time or some of the vocational schools, the students there that are maybe in an engineering program or electrical program, volunteer as part of the repair cafes, and that goes along with the high school students, and so that there starts to be a network of people from every sort of echelon that are able to contribute and understand that they also have value. So it's not always that, oh, people are helping me. It also gives people an opportunity to say, I want to give back to this community. And I'm sure there's far more 12-year-olds than I'd like to think about that know computers far better than I do, or know how to fix.
So the last comment that I made is that the continuum from the education to all these different venues, and you start with education. So, there is an opportunity to build that character, to create that culture, right? The nurture of civil engagement and all of that. If you can get that piece right as well, right, then you're really creating a generation that's geared towards that.
I think the different educational platforms play off that too. Expeditionary learning is so focused on utilizing community resources that by the time you've gone through that education, it just seems common sense to, use what's at your disposal, but also give back. When I was in that middle school I showed you guys, I don't know if you got to actually look at the picture, but it was a bunch of 6th grade students holding up signs, talking about climate change, talking about immigration reform, talking about these really big issues that you don't normally see a 6th grader talking about. But then on the other side of their education, they're getting technical skills. There's lab classes, there's shop classes. I watched a really interesting video about that middle school where each student in each class had to make their own energy producing windmill. So it had to produce at least 6 volts of energy. And getting those hands-on skills directly translates to things like these repair cafes and these maker spaces as well.
So I think just, to take the presentation that you guys had just a level up, that there are many opportunities for connectivity that were maybe not fully described that are between students in the classes becoming experts at the Maker Cafe. I think about my husband, who's an electronics technician, and he repairs his friends' radios, and people know that, and he doesn't want to be paid for it, he just repairs radios. And so those are the kinds of guys, they might be in this neighborhood or they might be from outside, but bringing those people, those organizations, and connecting them in, but also thinking about one of the things that neighborhoods like this especially need are connectivity to social services agencies that do mentoring with kids, and mentoring, like pairing up those mentoring nonprofits with the maker cafes or the repair cafes would be another opportunity for connectivity between people and resources that is producing the kind of, giving and receiving across different levels and across different components of the community. So I think there's just some more kind of like generative spiraling of connections that are obvious to us listening to it, but we're not really specified or visualized in your presentation.
That's a great word, mentoring. I mean, nurturing, reestablishing a culture of mentoring, because in many ways that we've kind of lost that. So.
Anybody else? Anybody?
Yeah, I was going to ask if you could clarify for me. I think you started off the presentation talking about excess capacity, and then so it's sort of like look for that theme throughout the presentation. Here and there you did say it explicitly, but I think in some ways it wasn't necessarily explicit. So I'm just kind of the recap, or at least for my enlightenment. Can you tell me a little bit more quickly about what kind of excess capacity are you thinking about, and how do your strategies make that excess capacity available to those in the community?
So we were focusing on 2 main types of excess capacity, one being the physical and the existing assets that are underutilized in our minds, as well as the human. social capital, the excess capacity found within individuals, which that ties in really well to the Repair Cafe, the Makers Cafe, and the way that we implement everything is also very tied into the excess capacity, again, of the physical spaces. So we're reusing or reprogramming spaces such as churches or old schools or
old strip malls, old
strip malls.
Excel Energy
That's
centers.
The concept, but everything that we just presented to you, aside from the middle school aspect, is all adaptive reuses.
Oh, I was just going to add, I mean, I think from my perspective too, when we looked at sort of the types of capital, right, in terms of financial or physical, or we really thought, our perspective was, people are sort of ignoring the people in this community. We're not really acknowledging that there is a lack of potential physical or financial resources, but that doesn't diminish the value that exists within the people that live there. And I know when we took a tour of West Colfax, there was even, sort of a lot of indication that there are people that could afford to live in the Highlands or Sloan's Lake or wherever they wanted, but they are in West Colfax and in Sun Valley because of the culture, because of the community, because of their threads. And so our perspective was coming from how do we bring what sort of is invisible and not utilized and give people resources to really kind of recognize their full potential in that community. And so even from the software integration standpoint, there's a lot of excess capacity when every single one of us is walking around with a cell phone. I mean, I can't tell you how many times a day I walk around and think, oh, somebody needs to repair that sidewalk, or, the city needs to come out and clear this down tree, or, whatever it is. But obviously the city doesn't have resources to be constantly monitoring to that, but we all do. I mean, we all have, these phones and the ability to upload constantly, and so kind of to the point that both Luke and Tom made, if we become citizen scientists and if we become a culture that values that as much as we value, sort of more traditional types of capital, how does that change how we function as a community? How does that change how we interact as individuals? How does that, so I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I think that when listening to this further description of what you meant by access capacity and how you look to deploy it, it's really also you're talking about it as a barrier in capacity.
Right.
In that it's not perceived as excess capacity because we're not understanding that it's there. But if by taking some of these actions, perhaps it then
right.
Or it's almost like unrealized capacity.
Yeah, you got to take a step back and look at it. It's like the city's built. These churches have been turned into these KIPP schools all around the country. It's not like a brand new idea. The existing infrastructure is there. It's just, do you have new ideas to repurpose it? The people already live in West Denver. A lot of them are immigrants. A lot of them had lives before coming to the United States and had different jobs than they have now. A lot of immigrant communities from Somalia, Ethiopia, and Kenya are very well versed in agriculture, which I think is why revision is so popular in West Denver. They have over 300 community gardens, which people just have in their backyards, and they create 46,000 pounds of organic vegetables for the community each year. They can get a bag of vegetables that are completely organic for $12. And then if they have...
feeding a family for a week, mind you.
A family of 4 for a week can sustain themselves off 1 bag. If they have food stamps, they can then get 2 bags for the same price. So it's not like these... I heard some critiques on the last presentation that, well, what if the community doesn't necessarily get engaged with this farming initiative? I mean, the statistics are there to prove that people want better food and they know how to do it themselves already. Farming techniques from Central America and from Africa and South America all come together in West Denver to create revision. It's excess capacity that's being taken advantage of.
Anything else? This is really, both presentations were fascinating. I want to ask Greg and Carl, from your perspective, having been through this, My reaction is that a lot, well, even the microfinance piece here actually goes to support the whole business incubators. There's a lot of connections which happen in your programs between your two. The practical aspects of a lot of these recommendations are much lower capital based than like in your group, but both, I'm starting to think if we could actually come together to integrate all four into some, like Jenny's talking about, can you, or Young talking about, can you take it to the third level? Okay, well, one of the reasons we have CISB and the idea of creating this alumni group of CityCraft is to try and find a way for those of you who care about this to continue to meet at some level. But I think the Integrated Research Center represents, you know, if we could put this in front of these presentations in front of the Integrated Research Center, what would happen? If we could put all these presentations in front of a food system consortium called by Gates, who's actually in this along with Colorado Health, what would they say? It is, I think these are very doable, implementable. I'm not saying it's not a lot more work to be done, but the inventory of the ideas and the information from all four of these presentations is way beyond anything with inventory. And it's a different level of inventory. It's a different level. And this one here, which is looking at excess capacity of churches, different types of existing buildings and all, it is a level of inventory that we certainly haven't gotten into. We know it's there. Does that make any sense to you guys at all? Or?
I think so, definitely. Just, I mean, looking at, you know, your guys' presentations and what I can remember of mine and Carl's, a lot of these same definitely themes obviously are on, but a lot of similar solutions. And so I think it'd be really interesting to try and combine those and kind of get everybody rowing in the same direction.
I think that the advantage or the benefit from presenting to the CP group and the people who are part of that group, as we start to think about the capital needs of these ideas, the immediate need is to start to figure out, is to clear that first hurdle of what our, the immediate need is to clear the first hurdle, which by that I mean start to do some of that next level of investigative work. And that takes resources, but those are the kinds of resources that I think are a little bit easier to come by. They're not necessarily as many dollars, but are more of an enthusiasm. There's more of an enthusiasm need for those sorts of things. And then if you have that, so that CISB group and the people who are members of that and involved in that have that kind of capital, they have that the ability to take that enthusiasm capital and translate it into at least some amount of dollars that can be used to do that next level of investigative work. You know, we're talking about inventories. We're talking about churches and converting them to schools. If we had a target school, is there an assessment, an architectural structural assessment that needs to be done there and figure out is that possible? And just kind of as we go down that funnel of big ideas to what actually can be done, there's I think the city might be next step down the funnel.
I just wanted to put the frame of like hacking on all this because hacking and I'm thinking about like a hackathon series as a way of drilling down into those questions where you bring all these people together and you know you get the other side of this picture and this story, which is the community advisory committees or you know folks that have investigated the food systems and can actually look at you know what are we trying to actually solve for in this food system and what is the phasing of that solution and so I think hacking is both forensic and very active way of starting to think about a hackathon with the Myers Learning and yes we code and these groups that code and thinking about how you know integrated with like your repair cafe, you know. It's great on a Saturday to go to a repair cafe, but if you've got like 3 kids right here, what the heck are your kids gonna do, you know, and how do you start to stack your programming so that you're solving for just the very real problems of people getting to a place and doing what they want to do or accomplish. So, you know, get those kids coding. I have like a lot happening.
Right. No, that's why we like the flexibility of not focusing on building infrastructure, you know, leveraging what's already there. Though it might not be easy and it might take a little while to find the optimal place, you know, I can't think of all these ideas. Like when I hear something like that, it's like, oh, why? I should have thought of that. Like if parents are coming to this with their kids and it's like, this is...
culture, so it's like what we do on Saturday.
Everywhere.
I mean, that's why we proposed to put it in the youth center.
Right. But I think CityCraft is at form packing. So.
I mean, that's like why we propose.
I think following these out, if these were successful, one generation out, right, I think for both of these things, following that and saying, this is what we think will be successful, because that'll help you identify the things you miss. Right? Education is a wonderful thing. You will know all around the world if you take a population that doesn't have access to education, you give them access to education, a lot of people leave and don't come back. So, yeah, but it's, right, I mean, in a real, so I want to know how you're going to prevent that, and this is where you go a generation out and you'll figure out, okay, we want them to come back. So that connectivity that Jenny talked about, right, that becomes really, really important because it's a social fabric that can't be broken by education, right? And education does break the social fabric.
Right, and we referenced Imagine 2020, which is the cultural side of Denver 2020, which I thought was just awesome. It's Denver giving resources to communities saying, hey, we want to make something cool right here that we like, that expresses our history and our culture. And I think if you get people motivated enough to do that, that creates a space where they want to be. It creates an identity for them. They're no longer just either a Hispanic in West Denver or an immigrant in West Denver. It's their home. Yeah.
I think the bigger question, just quickly tied to that, is when we're talking about the shifting of the economy, that next generation out really has to be part of it, because right now, what happened, the reason that education breaks it is because right now the assumption for success is the mobility of the labor force toward opportunity. And so in order to retain whole communities and to maintain what some people might call the right to place attachment, that's one of the kind of fundamental human needs, then in order to cultivate that and to create that as an option for people, education has to create opportunities that people could choose to stay rather than, and you know, we're not going to change the whole economy in the US, but we could change it enough locally that that people think differently and that their opportunities are different, so that it's not just cradle to career if career transfers you somewhere out, but right, it's cradle to career in place.
So I just want to, this is my second graduate class. This group is about, on average, 10 or 12 years younger than the last graduate class. I've talked with Ken and some of the others. It's been, I know for them, it's a very, very different teaching in an environment where you've got people that have like 15 years average experience versus students who've just come out of graduate school. We've had, where the first group like wore me out because of their experience. This group wore me out because they were trying to get what I was trying to say. It forced, both of them forced me to try and teach in a different way or try and get at things in a different way. And I would say that what's most rewarding to me, in particular with this group, is that I've actually been able to see and tangibly feel a learning process going on that is not about facts, it's actually about sensitivity. It's about how they think about connecting, how they're researching, putting pieces together. And just like your other class, I had no clue what you guys were going to come up with. I didn't have a clue really. What you guys have presented is so like beyond the love we wrote the last time we were together. It's fascinating. And I just want to thank you for digging in that deeply and thinking as hard as you have and doing the research you've done to bring together these ideas. The reason I'm teaching is to try and build CityCraft mindsets. The reason I spend the time I spend with Jung and his staff his team is to try and grow a mindset around this whole methodology and the whole way of thinking. And I think that one of the things that about today's presentations are that they are really looking at very practical use of realistic assets and people in a way that are very able to be, some of this could be really stood up, not without hard work, but I think they're able to be stood up, and I can see a lot of connectivity between what was going on here and some of the questions that were being asked of your presentation. There's actually the resource answers in some of these. But the reason I'm also teaching this is so that we can use the excess capacity of professors and students in graduate schools to actually work on issues of West Denver, use their intellect and talent to work in support of that community, not just do it for themselves. And both of these classes have really evidenced remarkable empathy and remarkable understanding and effort to get at some of the core issues. And so I want to thank you all for that, because that's a big gift to me that you're really digging to think that way. So thank you very much. Open Media would like to, Barb has asked me if there's some of the students in these presentations that will, I told Brad, you pick who you want. Just to be interviewed about your thinking about this class, about whatever you want to say, but she wants to use it because she sees CityCraft as the primary thing that's going on in DU. It's really representing her vision of this holistic, integrated framework, and so she'd like to do that. And if any of the jurors want to do that, you're welcome to do that as well. But thank you all very much, and thank you. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And your gift is that it's now 10:07. It's 9 o'clock, and you're free to go. Thank you, jurors, for all your time.